Passion isn't a starting point. It's not where you start. That's where you end. Passion is a destination. We too often conflate passion with hobbies. This is what I'm interested in. So I'm going to follow that. No, stop it. Here's where we want to start. We want to figure out what our strengths are.
Welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast, your guide for living a life by design. Here, we explore the journey of becoming an outlier, finding your purpose, mastering your mindset, optimizing your health, achieving financial freedom, and building a life centered around your passions. So tune in, transform, and thrive. Welcome to the Outlier Mindset. Let the journey begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Rodman Schley, and today we welcome to the show Billy Lahr, a certified mindfulness meditation coach, personal trainer, and behavior change specialist. Billy spent 21 years as an educator, and after experiencing burnout, he left his role as Dean of Students in 2021 to travel the world in search of meaningful experiences and community. Now he hosts the Mindful Midlife Crisis podcast, which helps individuals enhance their lives by recognizing their strengths, exploring their curiosities, and fostering personal growth and self-compassion. Hey, Billy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rodman. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to come right out of the gates with the question. I've learned a little bit about you, what you're about, what you are preaching and teaching in the world right now. And you say following your passion is BS. And I'm a big guy who always says, follow your passion, figure out what you want to be doing in life, and then start following that. Why do you say it's BS?
Passion isn't a starting point. It's not where you start. That's where you end. Passion is a destination. We too often conflate passion with hobbies. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm interested in. So I'm going to follow that. No, stop it. So here's where we want to start. We want to figure out what our strengths are. Let's figure out what we're good at. And then let's also figure out what our weaknesses are, because we can use our strengths to sharpen those weaknesses. Because no matter what, we're going to default to both our strengths and our weaknesses. So then it's important to develop this awareness around, hey, I recognize when I'm in the groove of my strength right now, but I also recognize that, I'm dipping into this behavior that often gets in the way of my success. So then we use those things and we cultivate curiosity. So what is it that we're curious about? Let's explore those things. Let's dive deeper into those. What is it that kind of, what are things that we're trying to figure out? And then through that, we find our community. These are the things I'm interested in. Who around me is also interested in this so that they can also foster that curiosity. And once you've done those three things, boom, you have purpose. Now, how do you turn purpose into passion? You multiply purpose by consistency, discipline, patience, and self-compassion. Once you do that, then you land at passion. But you didn't follow passion. You had to first figure out that other spot, and then you landed at passion. So for the love of everything, holy Rodman, stop telling people to follow their passion.
Well, and honestly, Billy, you're speaking my love language, because the way I teach it is the exact same way that you teach it. It is not the starting point. So I'm really glad to hear you say what you did, because you're right. If you don't know what your strengths are, your weaknesses, or what's important to you, you've got to identify that purpose first if you want to live the passion, right? So there is a process that you have to go through to figure that out. The problem is most people don't take those first steps to figure out what that purpose is. And, I think the statistic is only 10% know what their purpose is in life, and only 5% are actually walking that path, but they don't know where to start. And what you said is a great starting point for those people.
Yeah, and I was just listening to the 10% Happier podcast with Dan Harris yesterday, and I can't remember who his guest was, but he is an expert in the blue zone. So, the blue zones are where people live the longest right around the world. And they're all in different parts of the world. So, their diets are kind of sort of similar, but there's actually 9 pieces to that longevity. And one of them, surprisingly, is the people in those blue zones have a greater sense of purpose than the people around them do. And that was really revolutionary to me, because sometimes I think this idea of purpose, it sounds so pretentious, and I've kind of battled with myself around, okay, what do we mean by purpose? And to me, I think that our purpose is just generally what we're good at, what we're curious about, and who we surround ourselves with, that fosters that desire to grow. And I think the other thing too, when we talk about passion doesn't have to be your job. Like, a job can be a job that pays you a salary so that you can fund the thing that really brings you joy, and that you spend time and consistency and discipline, and you're patient with, and you're willing to suck at it for a while, but you're willing to forgive yourself for sucking at it. And then that creates some joy in your life. But your job doesn't have to be your passion. And I think there are too many people out there who are trying to sell this idea that turn your passion into your profession. Nah, stop it. A job can be a job that pays the bill, but is it important to understand what your purpose is? It is. Your purpose doesn't even have to be your job, but it has to be something that lights you up. And if you're willing to continue on with it and learn more about it, then inevitably it'll become your passion. I had Scott Welly on my podcast a while ago. It's episode 30, and he talks about this idea of, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day of your life. That's BS. If you love what you do, I'm willing to bet that you'll work even more and even harder at it because you enjoy it. And then you get into the sticky things of what you don't like doing, like, trying to, like, for me, with the podcast, social media, I just hate it, but it's stuff that I have to do. And then, like, financing and marketing and all that other stuff, all the bookkeeping, I hate doing that. But because I love the podcast, and because the podcast has provided a greater purpose for me, then I really enjoy it. But it's a lot of work. I would never say that it's not work. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like a lot of work. But because I feel like that's my purpose, is to help people navigate the complexities and possibilities of life, that work feels way more fulfilling.
Yeah, and you're proud of what you're putting into the world. I mean, so many entrepreneurs. I was just talking to my producer when he came in on Monday, and I worked this weekend. Not only did I work this weekend, I worked 32 hours this weekend, 2 days, and 'cause I had a lot to do. But it wasn't stuff that I didn't want to be doing. It was stuff that I was creating, and it was my body of work, and it was my, what I'm putting into the world. And, for me, it's kind of like I got to the weekend, and yeah, I could have maybe taken some time to enjoy something a little bit different at times, but I was really into what I was doing. I was really enjoying it. The other thing you were talking about is the blue zone. So it's very fascinating, because I actually own a property down in a blue zone in Costa Rica, actually heading down there tomorrow morning for a week. And it's amazing to me when I go down there. You were talking about people living with their purpose. But those folks and those people that are living in those zones, man, it is just such a different atmosphere. Yeah, the way they eat is very different. I love going down there, and, very rice and beans oriented, fish, chicken, those types of things. But man, they're really aligned with what they love to be doing. And, it's very, very simple stuff. It's not all this complex. It's not this hardworking this, or I've got to get through that. It's people who are getting up every morning. I've got an incredible landscaper who is incredible at what he does. He'll come in there. He's the most meticulous man in the world. But, he'll work his hours and he'll go home. Absolutely lights him up inside. But that's his purpose. And for him, the simplicity sometimes of life. And we have very complex lives. I mean, where we live here in the United States, we drive really, really hard, and our lives are very complex. Do you think that they're almost over complex?
Well, just to kind of go back to this idea of community, is there's an agreement within the community that this is the culture by which we will live, and we subscribe to this lifestyle. And I think we as Americans have subscribed to this idea of independence which is a beautiful, wonderful thing. But what necessarily is freedom if we feel like we're constantly chasing the next big thing? And this idea of the grass is greener, right? When do we ever become content? And I rail against this idea of get outside your comfort zone. Why are we constantly telling people to get out of their comfort zone? We spend so much time working to feel comfort, to experience comfort. Can we just let people chill in their comfort zone for a little while and enjoy the comfort zone for a little while before we tell them, get out of your comfort? We don't need people to get out of their comfort zone. What we need is for people to stretch their comfort zone like it's pizza dough. And you stretch pizza dough from the inside, and where you see spots get thin, you add dough, you add water, you add flour. You don't pull it from the outside. It's not external forces that are pulling on that pizza dough. There's not external forces that are pulling on your comfort zone. It's you pushing it from the inside. So we stretch it, because when we get outside of our comfort zone, what we've done is we've activated our amygdala, our fight, flight, or fright response. And we don't operate well when we operate from survival or we operate from fear. Now, I went skydiving when I was in Australia about a month ago. That was definitely outside of my comfort zone, but I'm not trying to live outside of my comfort zone. It was something I did that was pushing my boundaries, right? But here's the thing. I think what people mean when they say get outside your comfort zone is they're saying get outside your complacency zone. So I wish we would use language correctly. I'm a former English teacher. I wish we would use language correctly. Everybody, if you're in your comfort zone, chill, relax, and enjoy. You worked really damn hard to get there. But if you're finding yourself complacent, now let's take a look back at our strengths and our weaknesses, and what are we curious about, and who are the people around us, or that we can find, whether it's on social media or what have you, who can then inspire us and motivate us to take action.
I'm just curious on your opinion on this. I kind of feel like most of our superpowers would be found in our comfort zone. The stuff that we really love and the stuff that we really enjoy are sitting there in our comfort zone anyway. The stuff that we have to stretch and go out of are not necessarily aligned with our superpowers.
You know, it's funny you say that. I'm a diehard Pearl Jam fan. I just went and saw them a couple weeks ago in Seattle. It was shows 53 and 54 for me. So, you know, the reason why we as Pearl Jam fans follow them around the world. I've seen Pearl Jam in 9 different countries. Reason why we follow them around is because it's a different set list each and every single night. Now, there are people who have seen them in the hundreds, right? And they just put out a new album. We're excited to hear the new album, and those songs sound amazing. But you want to know where the band is really dialed in? With the hits. I want to get a rarity, right? I want to get a song that maybe I haven't seen ever or seen in a long time. Now, those songs are few and far between after 54 shows. But you know what I also want to get? I want to get Even Flow. I want to get Alive. I want to get Better Man, because the band is dialed in with those songs, and we as an audience are dialed in as well. But then I also want to experience the new songs on the album too, because I want to hear what those sound like. So going back to your question, I think when we are in our comfort zone, and especially if we're in a routine, routines are so crucial to starting our day and ending our day, because then what we do is we just sort of set the tone, and that clears us and gives us clarity to move forward in a more productive manner. And then we can really, when we can see risks and we can see chances, but we feel comfortable enough to take those. We feel confident enough to take those. But when we're out of sorts, we may not be willing to do that. So a lot of times you'll hear people say like, well, If that's how you're feeling, then you just need to take a risk. Stop it. Go back to basics. What is it that you're not doing? So let's get back into a routine. Are you getting enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough movement or exercise in the day? Go back to those basics, get grounded, and then you can start to move out of that complacency zone. You can start to push the boundaries of your comfort zone and stretch that comfort zone. But telling people get outside your comfort zone without sitting down and taking a look at what their routine is throughout the day, are they doing the basics? No one's going to do something different if they're not already doing the basics. And I'm willing to bet if you are doing the basics, that you're in a level of comfort and confidence that will inspire you to do something to shake things up.
You hit a little bit on exercise, which it's always been fascinating to me. And I love my exercise. I've got, my hour and a half is my hour to hour and a half every day. And when I don't have that, I don't have that same clarity. I don't get the same ideas. I don't have those things filling me up. So for me, and it's obvious. I mean, people who say, well, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. I can't even imagine if they don't have those things to stimulate that brain, to stimulate that thinking, that 1 hour a day is going to gain you probably 5 throughout the day, just because you're going to be so much better upstairs when you're trying to go through what you want to get done in the day.
I'll give you a perfect example of that. So I practice mindful meditation, and I came to mindfulness through therapy because in 2012, 2013, I had kind of hit my mental health rock bottom. So I went to therapy, and I was working with a woman named Mindy Ben-Dixon. Anytime I do an interview, I always give a shout out to Mindy Ben-Dixon because she's the one who introduced me to mindfulness, and mindfulness not only changed my life, but it most likely saved it as well. And when I was in the classroom, I would have my prep period, and there would be days, and every day, almost every day, I would practice mindfulness. I would do a meditation, 10, 15 minutes. But there would be days when I'm like, I just have too much work to do. I'm going to skip it, and then I'm going to do this. And then by the time the next class period rolled around, I was wiped out, and I wasn't effective. But there would be times when I'm like, I don't have enough time here. I've got a lot to do between now and the next period, next class, but I'm going to do this meditation. And so then I would do the meditation, and then I would get into a groove. And the next thing I know, I was like, oh, I got all of that work done. And now I have 5-10 minutes to just sort of relax before the next class comes in. So it's not so hectic. It's not such a rushed transition. So for me, that mindfulness practice was something that just kind of gave me an opportunity to be present, not necessarily clear my mind, because that's not the purpose of mindfulness, but it's a way to be present with what is, so that I know what I am operating from, what emotions I am operating from. And I can use that then moving forward through whatever task it is that I need to complete. So getting on into those kind of things and just saying, hey, this is a non-negotiable for me, and being understanding that, there are going to be times like this morning, I had to go and pick up my dad from the dealership because he was dropping off his car. So that threw off my schedule a little bit, but I was able to adapt and do the things that I normally do before I hopped on this call with you, right? So in doing that, I was prepared and I was able to clear my mind. But if I hadn't done those things with a little bit of flexibility, I might be more all over the place than I am right now.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about risks too, and taking risks. I mean, so many people talk about, I don't want to take big risks in life, or I don't want to go out. They're not built for it. But, I'm always preaching to people, especially entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs come up to me all the time and say, it's a lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. And I say, it's not about the risk. It's about being calculated in your risks, in making sure that you've gone through the process to make sure that you're going to minimize as much risk as possible, but still take the risk. What is your idea around risk? How much risk should people take, and how should they look at risk?
I think you look at risk just as a calculation, right? Like you take a look at the what's the risk, what's the reward, what's the cost, and all of this, and you have to weigh those. And I mean, it's really kind of like trying to buy a stock. Like there's a risk in that too. There's a risk in going up to somebody and talking to them because maybe they reject you in some way. There's always a risk. And I think what we need to do is, do you have the confidence? And if you don't have the confidence, let's go back to the basics and let's build up so that you feel a little bit more comfortable, and let's provide you with some strategies so that you then are willing to take those risks. I'm in a situation right now where I have a sure thing waiting for me in Seoul, South Korea, but I am weighing the pros and cons of staying in the United States, trying to build something that I've been trying to build for the last 3 years. And I'm going through it right now. And there isn't I don't know that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer, because sometimes you have to weigh, do I want to live in misaligned abundance or aligned scarcity? And to me, I think it depends on how long have you been doing one or the other. And for a long time, I've been in aligned scarcity, but there is a level of instability that comes along with that. And being a routine guy, being a structure guy, I would like a little bit more stability in my life. This situation in Seoul would provide me with stability. And I have been craving stability because I've been digital nomading for the last 3 years. So the longest I've ever been in one place at one time is 3 months. And I might leave, I might go back, might leave, then might go back. But it's that constant being on the move that has built up this level of scarcity. But it's all been aligned because I've been doing something that feels purposeful. So going to Seoul, do I go into misaligned abundance, or do I stay here and continue living in aligned scarcity? And like I said, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. I think really it just kind of comes down to what your gut tells you. But then also, do you have a fallback? What is going to happen? And one thing that I teach people when I'm doing my mindfulness courses is possible versus probable. Possible is always the worst case scenario. And we default to the possible because that's what's kept us alive for millions of years, because it's a survival instinct. But when we slow things down and we rationalize what the probable is, then we're able to see, okay, there's, yes, this situation could happen, but what's most likely to happen? These things are most likely to happen. What steps can I take to make sure that this doesn't happen? And again, that's where you utilize your strengths and you minimize your weaknesses, and you leverage your community, you leverage your connections, and you try and instill a sense of consistency and discipline. And when those things, and especially patience and self-compassion, and when those things start to wane, again, that's when you lean on your community. And generally speaking, your community is going to be able to guide you in some way, shape, or form. I think we too often, get wrapped up in this, I don't care what anybody else is thinking. Well, other people, there might be people out there who can shed insight on you, on your situation. So asking them, hey, here's some things, this is what I think about. And people who are kind will give you the information that you need. People who are nice will say, go for it, go for it. Take those people out of your life and find people who are kind and who will process the pros and cons with you. But the nice people who say, go for it, go for it, go for it, you need one of them in your life. Figure out who that person is, because that person's always going to be a cheerleader for you. So you can always go to that person when you need a cheerleader. But you really want to be surrounded by a community of people who are going to process the pros and cons with it, with everything with you.
Yeah. And you're going to become your tribe. I mean, those people that you surround yourself with, you're going to become that tribe. I mean, you're talking about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. The worst thing that you can do to not be aligned is to get yourself around all the people who aren't aligned with what you are and what you are wanting to become or what you're wanting to do. I've seen it over and over again. It's kind of like that old saying where the kids fall into the bad crowd. While you fall into the bad crowd, you're probably going to have some issues as a kid. Same with adults. It's just a different scale, a different place, a different way of being than when you were that kid.
Well, I think the best leaders are followers, but they also know who to follow. Because this idea of I did this all by myself, it's not true. You didn't. To me, people who say I did this all by myself fall into one of two categories. One, they're just completely unaware or narcissistic or arrogant and dismissive of anybody who's ever helped them out. Or two, they are not happy with the situation that they're in. And so they say, well, I did this all by myself. It's like, well, is this where you want to be? I don't think this is where you really want to be, because you're awfully negative. You're complaining a lot of the times. So if you're someone who says, I did this all by myself, I generally think that you fall into one of those two camps. So you do need to take a look at who are the people around me. There's that idea that if you surround yourself with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th millionaire, right? So I think being aware of, all right, this is what I'm curious about. This is what I want to learn about. Who are the experts that I can take a look at? But then who are people in my general vicinity, in my proximity, that I can also turn to and ask them for information? Because as wonderful as this technology is that has able to connect us all, for someone like me, I get a lot of my energy from face-to-face interactions. That's why I loved being a teacher, because I loved being in a classroom, facing students, imparting knowledge, giving them an opportunity to showcase their talents as well, to get them to become curious about this, that, and the other as well. But you need that face-to-face. So you and I are brought together by the wonderful world of technology, but then you most likely have people in your sphere that you're connected with. I have people in my sphere that I can drive to and see face-to-face and sit with them and get that kind feedback that we all need.
Yeah. And Billy, what about, you talked about these people who come into your group and they're the people who say, you can do it, or they're just giving you what you want to hear. They're people pleasers, right? And I've got a little bit of that in me at times too. And, where I'm feeling like I'm trying to please people more than I should. How do you break out of those cycles?
Whew, I'll tell you what, when I figure it out, I'll let you know, because I still struggle with that. I feel like I'm less of that, but I still struggle with wanting people to like me in some capacity. I guess I had a rude awakening when I was in Seoul, when I had someone tell me one time, talking to you stresses me out. And that was just like this, oh, wow. I didn't realize I was having this impact. I'm sure there are people listening who are like, well, that doesn't surprise me, dude. You're kind of intense. And I tell people I practice mindfulness so that I can be this level of obnoxious, because if I didn't, I'd be an out of control a-hole. So for me, practicing mindfulness also brought awareness to, hey, is what you're doing genuine and authentic? Do you have ulterior motives here? And is that ulterior motive that you just want to be liked? Or is this a relationship that you want to continue nourishing, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a professional relationship, whether it's a platonic relationship or a friendship, right? So I'm still navigating that. And I think it's a real challenge for me. But I think in this virtual world, it's really easy just to kind of be gone and not maintain those connections for good or for bad, right? But then with people that you surrounded yourself with, and whether they're business partners or whether they're colleagues or what have you, taking a look at, okay, what is it that this person needs in this moment? And how can I deliver it tactfully? How can I deliver it in a way that is respectful? And I think that's a nuance that gets lost, because if we disagree with someone, or if we are offering them feedback about something that maybe we feel like they didn't do well, there's this need to be mean. We don't have to be mean. We can be respectful and give difficult feedback. And the reality is, if we're able to do that, and that's a delicate dance, but if we're able to do that, the person is really going to be appreciative, especially if we say, hey, listen, you didn't do this well. Here are some suggestions. Let me, if you'd like, I will walk you through it the next time, just so you can kind of see what it looks like. Because then what you're communicating to that person is, let's do this together. Together, everyone achieves more, right? This idea of teamwork.
Yeah. I was thinking too, a little bit as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about even like social media. And I know you said you're not a big fan. You don't like to do it much, but you kind of feel like it's something you've got to do. But it's so easy for people to be very abusive or mean or go after you on social media. So much easier than if I was sitting there face to face with you. I might not say something, but that same person, if they were on social media, might go, you know what? I'm going to just blast this guy. Because, you don't really know that person. You don't know what they're about. How do you start to sort out those kind of feelings when people are going after you? Like, because if you're putting yourself into the world, most people are, it's their true self. It's their authentic self they're trying to put in the world. You've got this person who comes in who might just blast them and they go, well, I'm just going to go back in my shell. I'm not going to show that authentic side of myself. How do you deal with that?
I think you always have to ask yourself, is there an element of truth in this? And if you do that, if you say, is there an element of truth in this? Okay. And am I being authentic in myself? Am I truly being authentic? Or is this person calling me out because I'm not living my message? If they are, and you take a look in the mirror and you're like, you know what, I'm not living my message. Thank you for that reminder, right? Now, they may have said it quite harshly. So then you just kind of have to look at, what is it that they're really trying to say right there? And is the intention to hurt my feelings? Sometimes, yeah, especially with trolls. But then how do you use that negativity? You can spin it into a positive in some way. And if you can read it and say, hey, you know what, that's not true. And I'm confident within myself to be able to say that's not true. Confident, not arrogant, right? So I'm confident enough to look at that and say, you know what, I'm thinking about that. And is there an element of truth to that? Maybe. But you know what? No, there isn't. So now you can just let it go. And in all honesty, why not? You can delete it then, right? To me, if there are negative comments that are just there to be mean, they're mean to be mean, or they're not even true, you could delete those. That's no problem. But if someone is calling you out for something that you said, then I think it's worth engaging in a dialogue. Maybe not on social media, because nuance is always lost in social media, and people don't like nuance. People want black or white. People just want you to see their side. That's it. There's no nuance. But you can take a look at it and then maybe have a conversation with that trusted person who is kind with you and say, hey, I got this feedback the other day. I want to run this by you. What do you think? What do you see? And then you're going to get that honest feedback. And they might say, you want to dismiss that, or they might say, hey, you know what? It's something that you could work on. And I think that is how you use those comments.
Yeah, I do a very similar process where I look for the truth first, kind of do a self-awareness with myself, go inside and go, okay, is there any truth to this? Is there anything that I can learn from this? And is there anything I can take out of this? And if not, my usual answer is just, well, this person is just not for me. And I'm not going to be for everybody. That's okay. I can't possibly be for everybody. And, that's okay too. You just got to put a smile on and go, you know what? I know who my people are, who my tribe is, who I'm trying to reach. And this person is just not it. And there's nothing wrong with that too. It's kind of like making sure that your tribe is aligning with who you are and what you want to be putting into the world. So, but I really like that. I like the idea because we all take things and it's hard not to take things personally, right? I mean, every little thing is hard not to read that one comment. You might have a string of 100 incredible pieces of feedback or comments or collaboration or whatever it might be. And then you have that one person who just is negative or comes in with something that's hurtful or whatever it might be. And we focus in on that one instead of really taking in the 99 impacts and the people who are really kind of meant to be part of that conversation, that tribe.
Well, I'll tell you, I used to be a dean of students, which is always the bad guy. All I did was deliver bad news to parents, to students, and to teachers sometimes too. The social media harassment that I endured during my time as a dean was so bad that I had to involve the police at some point in time. So if anyone knows how to navigate those kind of comments on social media, it's me. I've been there before. And I had to I had to look at some of the stuff on there and say, okay, is there an element of truth to this? Could I have handled these situations a little bit better? And then how much of this is just teenage angst as well? And damn it, those teenagers aren't crafty with social media.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. And I just kind of similar. My father was my high school principal, and then he went on to be superintendent of schools. And, and I've been resident of some, like a very large organization in the United States. You're just not going to make everybody happy. There's going to be people, and you've got to be able to filter the noise correctly, learn where you need to learn, but filter out the stuff that just is not quite true. And it's tough. It's just tough to do.
Yeah. And it's, developing a thick skin, it takes time, and it takes those kind of comments in order to, especially if you're someone who's sensitive, and like I am, right? I'm a sensitive guy. I'm a people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, you tend to take that feedback and those comments and those criticisms to heart. You take them personally. So you have to be able to develop that thick skin over time, and it's not easy. And that's why, when I talk to people about turning this purpose into passion, I always throw in patience and self-compassion in there too. People want to harp on consistency and discipline, and those are very, very important. But patience and self-compassion are what allow you to suck at something and keep going. You can't have consistency and discipline without patience and self-compassion. Because if you're not patient and if you're not self-compassionate, you'll give up. And that's coming from a perfectionist. As someone who wants everything done perfect, all of these things that I'm suggesting to people, it's stuff that I've had to navigate because I know I won't be consistent and I won't be disciplined if I'm not patient and I'm not self-compassionate. The self-compassionate piece I have definitely improved upon, and I'm really, really working on the patience piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. We don't live in a patient society either. I mean, we're go, go, go. We're always trying to get X amount of things done in a day. We are not taking that time to have that mindfulness that you're talking about where, people think that they're going to just do a checklist of stuff to knock things off in the day and they've had an accomplishment, rather than taking some time to really process things, really think through things. And you would be much, much more effective if you would just take that little time in the morning. If you would just do that little, it could be a little walk in the morning. It could be whatever it is. You're going to get so much more done in that day if you just take a little bit of that extra time and develop that patience to really maximize your days.
And that's why, and I know it's difficult in this work environment that we have, but I don't believe in 9 to 5. I believe in 8 to 8. But in that 12-hour span, you can work for 8 hours or 6 hours or 4 hours, whatever. But you have that flexibility in that time. And I think this whole idea of the 9 to 5 is really outdated, because to consistently be productive for 8 hours a day, I just think that's unrealistic. Where do we allow time for somebody to go for a walk or practice, go to yoga or go lift weights, knowing that that's going to be something that actually increases productivity after that? And I think corporate America needs to start taking a look at those kind of models so that they're able to recognize that, these long breaks, maybe it's an hour out of the day, it actually doesn't impact my bottom line negatively. It actually impacts it positively.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, when you're sitting there working on something, you get into that place where you're feeling stuck, or you're feeling like you can't break through. And this happened to me this weekend a few times, where it's just like, get up and walk away. Get up, take a breath, take that 5 to 10 minutes of time. You might be sitting there grinding for hours and hours trying to figure something out. But if you just walk away for that 5 to 10, or go do a walk, or go lift some weights, or do something, and you come back, it's amazing how things will just click, or it'll turn on, or you'll have that answer sitting there when you get back. And unfortunately, people think, well, I just got to press through it. I got to press through it. I got to press through it. An hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, and you are less productive in those instances.
The 30-minute walk is the most underrated and underutilized exercise in the world. A 30-minute walk every single day could very well transform somebody's life who is feeling stuck, who doesn't do much movement. If there's anything that you can do throughout the day, start with a 30-minute walk and see if that brings a bit more clarity, particularly around your midday. How does that impact you? And I think too, there's no reason why in this day and age, why we can't do a walk while on our phone or while we're having a call. Because sometimes what I'll find is, if I'm on a call with somebody and I'm out for a walk, I'm actually processing information much better when I'm in that movement. Like after we're done, I'm going for a walk because we've shared a lot and you've provided some insight too that I'm going to need to process. So I'm just going to need to have to sort that out. And if I sit here and feel stagnant, it's like muddy water. So, you have to keep that flow going, that circulation going, so things don't coagulate.
Hold on, Billy. I got my producers waving me down here. Yep. Oh, yeah. So he's pointing out maybe we could talk a little bit about chips.
Yeah.
I'll set you up on that. So we just talked a little bit about, flowing a little bit more, and, we're living in this to-do list world. I'll say, well, what do we need to do to start getting out of that to-do list type world? Set you up for chips. And then I think after that question, I'll start getting into the wrap.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Good, Mike? Okay. So Billy, what do we need to do? I mean, we're living in this to-do list world. What do we need to do to break out of that and start to get better with our time and how we're living our days?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to this idea of living intentionally. So to-do lists are just there to keep you busy. Do this, do this, do this. So I created this thing called a CHIPS list. And so CHIPS stands for complete, What are the things that you need to complete today, not tomorrow, today? These things are going to get done before you go to bed. And in fact, they have to get done because you said they're going to get done. You are committing to completing these things here today. And really, it should only be about 3 to 5 things. 5 might even be pushing it. I think it's the 3 things that have to absolutely get done today. And then H stands for hooray, because you should celebrate what it is that you complete. And how you celebrate it is up to you. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Exercising, that's not a hooray. Exercising is a basic, right? Meditation, that's a basic. I advise against celebrating and doing your hooray with food or alcohol, because that warps our relationship with food and alcohol. I don't think that we should view food and alcohol as a treat. I just think it's something that we can enjoy in moderation. So I don't necessarily see it as a treat. But what are some examples of a hooray? You spend some time with this friend here, or you're going to watch this show on Netflix, or something along those lines, something simple that when you're done, you're like, you know what, that felt good, that felt refreshing. That's your hooray. And then the IPS is anything that you put in progress or you're going to start. So in progress just means that you're moving the progress bar along. Start means it's something you're going to start and it's going to go into the in progress box. But know that anything that's in progress or that you start is eventually going to move into the complete. Because why would you start it if you're not going to complete it? So just kind of keeping that in mind. People can do that daily. That might be a lot. Or people can do that weekly. That might be a bit more manageable. But I like to use CHIPS list because then what it does is it focuses me on the things that absolutely, positively have to get done today. And then if I want, I can choose what I want to work on a little bit later, or I can say, you know what, I'm done. I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the energy to continue on with it. But in doing so, you become more intentional around what it is that you're going to complete.
I like the hooray part too, because, I feel like as a society, we don't celebrate enough when we've hit a task or we've reached a milestone or when we've finished something, because we just kind of get on to the next thing. And there's no really looking back and celebrating maybe that milestone or that accomplishment or the fact that you just got something done.
Yeah. I mean, we need to take time. Like, we work really hard. So let's celebrate and figure out, hey, what is it that brings me joy? And I really do think that that's a worthwhile exercise too. What are the things that bring me joy? And a lot of times, the things that bring you joy are the things that you're curious about. So then you've kind of got a crossover right there too. Or you think back, what were the things that I really enjoyed doing as a kid? And then kind of going back and being that kid again, bringing out that kid and the joyful wonder of childhood. Greg Scheinman has a really great quote about this idea of, you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing. So I think it's really important that we find things that bring us joy and do a little bit of those things every now and then, because that's what keeps us young. That's what keeps us fresh.
Yeah. Well, I certainly want to stay young. Billy, this has been a great conversation today. I want people, though, to be able to find you and be able to connect with you, because I know that, we were able to touch on a few things today, but you've got so much incredible knowledge. And, and especially when it comes to mindfulness and stuff, that those are deep dives. I mean, that takes a lot of work, a lot of understanding about how to really be mindful, because I think people think they can just I'll just be mindful today. No, you really got to practice mindfulness and to figure out how it's going to integrate in their days. So where do people need to go to find you? And if they want to learn more about how they can find that mindfulness and how they can get more attached to kind of living their lives the way they should be living their lives?
Yeah, I've got a free course, Mindfulness for Anxiety, at www.billylahr.com. That's BILLYLAHR. Or you can go to the podcast website, which is www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com. You can get those episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And if you go under podcasts and you click on fan faves, you can take a look at what the best episodes are, because trust me, they're not all good. So, we were trying to figure things out there for a long time, and then we finally got into a groove. So we created a fan faves list of episodes that people reached out and said, that was a really great episode. Who was that guest? So check those things out. If you join the newsletter, you get that free Mindfulness for Anxiety course. I'm also on Instagram, mindful_midlife_crisis, and I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So you can find me there at Billy Lahr. Send me a message. I'm always curious what people took away from these kinds of conversations. What resonated with you? Do you think I'm full of crap? Tell me, what do you disagree with? I'd like to know. Let's have that conversation too. Share your other side. Maybe you firmly believe that you should follow your passions. Let's have a spirited conversation around that.
That sounds great, Billy. And then I always ask one last question. I love this question because so many people have so many different answers. But, we've all got these lifetimes of experience and the knowledge that we've gained over time as we age, as we get older, we get more experience. But if you could go back in time and just sit down with your younger self and give yourself one piece of what you feel is like your most valuable advice that you've acquired over a lifetime of learning, what would that be?
Practice yoga. Start practicing yoga. If you are 15 years old, especially you 15-year-old bros out there who think that it's all about, bench press and deadlifts and squats, do all that and then do some yoga as well. When I was in Hanoi and Chiang Mai, I was feeling stuck physically, mentally, emotionally. And I was like, you know what? If I go to the gym and I lift, I'm going to hurt. Everything's just going to hurt. So I need to get more mobile and flexible. So I started going to yoga, and especially by the time I got to Chiang Mai and I was working with, her name is Kru Nuk. So Kru means teacher in Thai. So Teacher Nuk at Yoga Ananda in Chiang Mai. She was an incredible teacher, and I found that just through that yoga practice, and then that unlocked a lot of creativity. It unlocked a lot of productivity for me. I started going back into the gym, and when I was lifting, I was getting stronger and I was recovering so much faster. Yoga is so crucial to this idea of movement and clarity and like unstuckness. So if I were to go back, I wouldn't listen to myself at 16 years old, but if I were to go back, I would definitely want to incorporate more yoga, more mobility, more stretching in my life, because it's just made such a difference. It's part of my morning routine. It's part of my evening routine now to just incorporate 10 minutes of movement in the morning, 10 minutes of mobility in the morning, and then some foam rolling at night. There's foam rolling. There's some studies. It's a give or take whether it's actually beneficial. Currently, I'm finding it to be very beneficial. So though that's something that I would strongly encourage people to find. And if you're like, I can't afford a yoga studio, the good news is there's a lot of yoga on YouTube, 15, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Just get started with it. But first of all, go back to basics. Is your sleep in order? Are you drinking enough water? Are you taking care of yourself in other ways? Don't add something without doing those basics first.
Julie. Yeah, we have the world at our fingertips. Billy, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been just a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it.